Now, when you have permission to remove people, soon as you see that, and Shakira,
Okay, good.
yeah, soon as you, even if it's a suspect.
Yeah.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, and good evening, good night, or good morning to all of you. We are so pleased to have people in this meeting from all parts of the world in different time zones. And I am Shakira Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago, a teacher for the past 17 years. And we want to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day for those who fulfill that role. So we want to thank you all for joining us on our program today. So let's play a song, a 1-minute song to celebrate this day. Dr. Mahabir, would you play that song? Are you able to get the song? Beautiful.
On this special day, we honor dear mother for all the love you give like no other. Your gentle touch, your guiding hand, you're the reason we can stand. Happy Mother's Day, with love we say. You're a sunshine on a cloudy day, in every smile and every tear. Your love for us is always near. Through every trial you've been our rock. Your strength and grace and endless stock.
So thank you for that. And we want to thank everyone and say Happy Mother's Day to mothers-to-be, aunties and fathers, all who fulfill the role of mothers. We wish to join Fiji on Wednesday, May 14th, in observance of Indian Arrival Day, when the first batch of Indian indentured laborers went to that country. And Jamaica also celebrated Indian Arrival Day yesterday, May 10th. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the 259th edition of our ICC Thought Leaders Forum, and we wish to sincerely thank all of you who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing Pan-Indo-Caribbean and Pan-Indian Diaspora Global Project. For 258 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday. And in the past 5 years, we have featured 1,261 presenters from all parts of the world speaking on 258 topics. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a weekly forum being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. And like today, we often partner with the Amina Ghafoor Institute for the Study of Indentureship and its Legacies, led by Professor David Dabydeen, who is with us today. And we are also pleased to be partly supported by the Sport and Culture Fund in the Office of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And in order to continue this weekly program and to make it bigger and better, we are kindly asking for suggestions and volunteers. If you give a donation, your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials, and you can contact Dr. Mahaber for details. We also wish to remind everyone of our conference in and tour of South Africa from August 2nd to the 14th this year. And if you're interested in participating, please let us know. I'll introduce our moderator today, who is Shalima Mohammed, the co-director of this ICC Zoom platform, who is a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago. She obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the USA. Shalima, welcome.
Thanks much, Claire. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Namaste, and a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with us, and especially on Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all. This program is being recorded on Zoom and live streamed on the YouTube channel of the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. Welcome to everyone on YouTube at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to avoid intrusions from trolls, our IT manager has muted everyone. Speakers, please do not admit anyone, do not unmute anyone, and do not allow anyone to share your screen. Thank you so much for cooperating. Our program today is about Balgobin and other Indo-Guyanese folklore figures. This topic explores the rich oral traditions carried by Indian indentured laborers and preserved across generations in Guyana in the Caribbean. Central to the discussion is Balgobin, a heroic and often mischievous schoolboy. This program will examine how Balgobin and other Indo-Guyanese figures have adapted to the Guyanese landscape while maintaining deep ties to Indian mythological roots. This program celebrates the power of storytelling in shaping Guyanese identity and preserving cultural memory. A book entitled The Balgobin Saga by Pitember Prasad was published by Hansa Publications in 2009. It offers a reintroduction to Balgobin, an elusive and often overlooked character in Caribbean folklore. And it was while on our ICC Indian Diaspora tour of Guyana recently that this entire topic came into question. And of course, we want to welcome Pitember Prasad, who was with us on that tour. Pitember is the president of the Guyana Heritage Society, former chairman of the National Library, oral historian, columnist, television producer, and author of the books titled The Balgobin Saga and Guyanese Writers of Indian Ancestry. Welcome, Pitember.
Thank you, Shalima. Thank you all. Good afternoon, good evening, namaskar, assalamu alaikum. I am happy to be part of this venture. It's a remarkable venture, and thank you to Shalima, Shakira, and Kumar. I don't mind using first name because I feel that I'm very close to you guys. I thank you for making me part of this program, and good luck with future venture. Right, we on to slide 1.
Yes, Navin would show it.
Yeah. Right. The heading here is preserving our intangible heritage. And during this discussion, we'll see 3 forms or 3 ways or 3 methods of preserving our intangible heritage. 1 is capturing our story in the book form. 2, by form of video. And 3, by having a storyteller, as in Michael Kahn. Now, Balgobin has achieved these 3 feats because I rescued him from sort of erasure and placed him between 2 book covers. Then the University of Guyana made a docudrama, an entertaining docudrama, which you will see later on. And then there is the storyteller, as I mentioned just now, in the form of Michael Kahn, that will entertain you also. So that's three forms of preserving our intangible heritage, our stories, our songs, um, and things like that that we benefit a whole lot from. Now, the next slide. Oh no, please go back to the other one. Yeah. By way of introduction, listen carefully. Nothing does pass in joke. You know though, look at it closely. Nothing does pass in joke. And as you go through Balgobin, you'll see nothing pass in joke. Empty gun shoot guilty man. You can laugh at that one. Drunk man, I know what he said. These are some Guyanese proverbs to put you in the mood. They said drunk man don't know what he's saying, but he damn well know what he's saying. There's the other form now, Tantafax. What is Tantafax? Tantafax is not unlike when you go to the cook night, Saturday night cook night at an Indian wedding, and you have the Maujin session where people kind of tease each other in songs and riddle. So you have Tantafax, that is tantalized with facts. And it's not unlike the Trinidadian pecan. Next slide. This is the cover of Balgobin Saga. Next slide. Right, as it is Mother's Day, I thought I'll share this dedication page. So the book is dedicated to my mother for bearing my navel string in the library. My dad for the seriatim in storytelling. To my family, who couldn't stomach literature for not putting food on the table, but stayed the course nevertheless. And to other relatives. Next slide. The Balgobin Saga was published in 2008 and was launched in Guyana to coincide with CARIFESTA 10. This is a groundbreaking work, a seminal work. It may be that Balgobin was recreated by the early Indian immigrants to counter the African Anansi or to complement Anansi. We will never know for sure. Oral tradition is never fully accurate. The Balgobin stories are more or less what I deem humorous anecdotes. Next slide, please. The story riddle was of great interest to all. Its immense fascination largely due to its participatory nature. The story riddle was a long, step-by-step engaging story, clouded in allegories and analogies, crowded with information, and a challenge at the end. Kata is a story. Many times it's a story, it's stories within stories, like in the Panchatantra, Hitopathesa, Upanishad, and the Puranas. Next slide. Something more about Balgobin. Balgobin encapsulates the Indian indentureship experience. For example, we see movement or development of a people, upward mobility, of the people moving from the boneyard, living in lodges, to free yard of slightly better standard of living, and then on to the nuclear housing scheme of modern housing and amenities. The sugar plantation was the economic center of their world. The structure of the plantation, the pay office, the mushrooming markets around the play office, the school inspector, the church, although there were other places of worship. Despite the struggle, it was the oral literature, of which Balgobin was a large part, that helped the people to deal with trauma and challenges of displacement. Next slide. A shot of the Loji, familiar shot. And these images I borrowed from the internet just for educational uses. Sugar plantation. The next slide, please.
I think Pitamba's internet may have stopped. Pitamba, you're back.
Where did I stop?
On this particular slide,
Okay.
we're not to sit down.
When last you sit down and talk old time story? Balgobin, Nancy, Jumbi Tory. When last you sit down by the copper and talk old time story? When last you sit down under the calabash tree, the tambourine tree, the silk cotton tree? When last you sit down in the moonlight, in the hammock, and talk old time story? When last? And now we come to the feature, The Legend of Balgobin. Coming out of this seminal work, the publication of the Balgobin saga, was this docudrama, The Legend of Balgobin, which made its debut in 2012 at the renowned Theatre Guild of Guyana. The short film was produced by the University of Guyana under the auspices of Cine Guyana. Now enjoy the show and the remainder of the event. Thank you. That's it to me so far.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pitamba. So let's have that docudrama now. I'm looking forward to seeing this. Shouldn't be too long. 14 minutes?
No, 14 minutes.
Okay, very good. Dr. Mahabir, can we have that docudrama, please?
The topic is starvation.
How you refer to a topic like a starvation? What it look like?
Use your brain, Balgobin. Think very hard. Alright, Balgobin, what is this? How can this be starvation when you just scratch the paper?
No, teacher. This is the Bamsi, right? And all they say a cobweb. And you know, eat so long that the Bamsi full of cobweb.
I don't know that anyone can tell you exactly who Balgobin is or who Balgobin was. Whether it is based on reality, whether it is based on any real person, or whether it was just something created by the imagination of the people.
See him very often as a little schoolboy that appears to be a bit dumb, but he's not actually dumb because he is quite witty. He's always the savior in the class.
He basically is the hero of tales where common sense or practicality is greater than academic knowledge.
Balgobin is supposed to be an Indian guy or East Indian guy who is from not necessarily a well-educated background. In our terms, we would say that he's a dunce.
He's always coming up with the right answer, the right time, and saving the class. Sometimes he gets into trouble, you know, getting the right answer.
Students, good morning, teacher. And how are you today? Fine, thank you, teacher. Okay, let's get some work done. Today I want you all to draw.
Draw this early morning, teacher?
Yes, Balgobin.
Bal means playful. Gobin is one of the names of Krishna, one of the gods. Krishna was a playful god, full of pranks.
For me to go for draw?
Well, you will attempt drawing today.
But teacher?
Well, students, what I want you all to draw is cricket.
Cricket?
Yes, I suggest you make a start.
Me know what me gonna do.
Okay, Balgobin, let me see what you're doing. Balgobin, what nonsense is this?
The rain and fall, teacher, them not play today.
Nobody knows what is their origin. Nobody can tell you who is the first person to tell a Balgobin story.
It may have been when the indentured laborers came, the Indian indentured laborers came onto our shores. And just as the Africans came with their folklores and folk tales, this probably would have been one aspect of the Indian culture that they brought with them when they came to our Guyana.
Fairy tales and all forms of proverbs and so that we have locally, they all sort of came from the countries which the people originated from.
Judging from the tales themselves and the kind of background that we can put them in, I would say that Balgobin must have developed somewhere in indentureship, during the indentureship period or just after the indentureship period.
Balgobin was used, to alleviate the trauma of living in displaced society. Persons who came from Africa and other parts, they use the oral tradition.
I want you all to draw an aeroplane now. Balgobin?
Yes, teacher?
All you did was scratch on this paper.
No, teacher, no.
Well, explain what I'm looking at.
This is the smoke from the airplane that left here. This plane gone, the smoke left here.
In spite of that reputation of being the dunce boy in the school, Balgobin turns out to be the wisest. He turns out to be the smartest.
He was able to use common sense and logics to work out things.
These wise fools are people who, despite themselves, tend to come out okay in the end.
The whole idea of common sense, I would think, and the whole idea that having book knowledge is not necessarily being intelligent.
Things that are learned in school aren't necessarily superior to having common sense.
Okay, students, it's now time for mental arithmetic. Put your paper away. Sita, if you have 10 sheep on one side of a fence and one sheep jumps over, how many will you have remaining?
9 sheep gonna live, teacher.
Very good. Alright, Balgobin, listen very carefully. If you have 10 sheep and one jumps over the fence, how many will you have remaining?
None are left, teacher.
None? Why not?
Teacher, you don't know sheep for real? If one jump over the fence, all of them go follow.
I see some similarities between this character and an Indian wise fool, as we call it, called Sheikh Chile, that is quite popular in northern India.
In Jamaica, there is a character called Big Boy. And Big Boy is a character not too far removed from Balgobin, because Big Boy is a schoolboy who has knowledge well beyond his age. And that's why they call him Big Boy.
They are similar to tales that are told in England. I think the protagonist of those tales, his name is Johnny. However, he makes comments towards English society and the church.
They're different to the trickster characters. The trickster character would be a character like a Nancy, who is quite conscious of all that he does and knows exactly what the outcome of what he expects to do, and other people are manipulated by him.
Okay, class, it is now time for spelling. Devindra, yes, teacher. Can you spell the thing that your mother cooks in? Pot, teacher, pot, P-O-T. Okay, Balgobin.
Yes, teacher.
Can you spell the thing that you sleep on?
Balgobin, next, A, right? And they on him, go Balgobin, go, because there seems to be on the right track. Balgobin just finished off by saying B,
A, G.
What?
The thing about the stories is that it is important what they are about, because what they are about tell you a number of things about what you're dealing with. The main thing that, as I've said, that the Balgobin tales are about is basically school.
Balgobin, a friend, returned after about 4 or 5 years, and he started boasting, I went to England to study, and I came back with a BA. Balgobin said, cha, my sister stayed right here, and she got a BA. She got a barber. Balgobin, and the guy, this brilliant guy who came back now couldn't take that. But he invited Balgobin to a restaurant. He said, Balgobin, anything you want, you order, I'm treating you. Balgobin started ordering 2 fried rice, 2 pieces of chicken, 2 pieces of potato. And the friend said, Balgobin, you can get colic. He said, bring 2 other too.
The thing about it is that Balgobin is always outwitting the teacher. Not so much outwitting, but showing more intelligence than his classmates, and very often more intelligence than the teacher. Because sometimes when the teacher thinks that Balgobin is stumped with something, Balgobin comes up with an answer that would stump the teacher.
He said, why, Balgobin, I want to ask you one more word. Can you spell the word ink? He said, sir, can you make that? He said, can I carry to the headmaster? Say, we go now. So the headmaster said, why? What does your teacher tell me to spell? He said, he told me to spell ink. He said, sir, I can't make that. He said, I'm going to bench you. He said, Inky. He said, can you please go back to your class? Because the teacher asked him to spell the word ink, and he cannot spell the word ink. So the teacher tell him, I'm going to bench you. He said, Inky. So ink they don't spell?
Only discovered Balgobin after coming to Guyana and after researching these things, and then you hear that among the many different tales, folk tales that exist in Guyana, there are these Balgobin tales.
Prior to the research, I had never heard of Balgobin. Most of the tales that we learned and we'd research on as well. That's one of the issues that we were looking at, is that the tales, most people don't seem to know them.
My knowledge went as far as what the lecturer, Mr. Crichton, spoke to us beforehand. while prepping us for our field work.
I heard it from elders in our village, and I even acted once or twice at our mandir.
I heard a story from a friend even when I was in school.
Not in an academic sense. As long as people keep telling them at street level, at village level, and so on, they will survive in the future.
What would be really, really important, I think, is for some person to take this up as a research area and to really see at what point we started, if there was any point in which we talked about Sheikh Chile at all, and at what point then did we go from Sheikh Chile to Balgobin.
As young people, we should try to learn more about our culture because, like I said, Balgobin tales, we had difficulty in getting it. And I don't want to be general, but if we should go and do a survey of how many young people actually came across Balgobin tales, like myself, you may have few or none at all. And I think that we as young people should try our best to carry on these tales.
If that does not happen, they will not survive. If people don't tell them, they will not survive. The researchers might be able to play a part in keeping them alive. So, like, for example, you research them and then you basically redistribute them in the society and promote them and so on and thing. That might be able to work, but the best thing is for them to continue to live among the people who tell them in the villages and the street and so on. If that don't happen, then survival is in danger.
Thank you very much for that. It was a very, very insightful docudrama. I think Balgobin was quite unorthodox and probably epitomizes what is called today multiple intelligences. He clearly was a character who reflected on his own lived experience. And is it possible it was because he was illiterate? Pitambar, what do you have to say?
I would prefer that you go on to the other presenters and then we can talk.
Good. I'm not seeing any raised hands for questions or comments, and I would agree with you. Let's bring in our next speaker, who is Mr. Al Crichton. He appeared in the docudrama just now, but he's a lecturer and former Deputy Vice Chancellor and Dean at the University of Guyana, Director of the Confucius Institute at the University of Guyana, and Director of National School of Theatre and Drama. Welcome, Mr. Crichton.
Thank you very much. It is indeed an honor to be given the opportunity to participate in this seminar on Balgobin and Indian cultural traditions. I'll be very grateful if you can put up the PowerPoint for me. Yes, okay. So we're dealing then with Indo-Guyanese folklore figures. Next slide, please. Now, the thing is that when we're looking at this subject, we're dealing with a range of different things. And I don't have much time, so all I can do is give you a kind of an introduction and hope that that will lead your thinking into more detailed discussion of these forms. Many of these traditions are religious. If we go through the Indian traditions, many of them are religious. Some of them are secular. Some of them are theatrical. And they all belong to the oral traditions. And these oral traditions, quite wide-ranging, and many of them Indian, East Indian in Ghana. Next slide, please. There are, as I said, several Indian traditions, and many of them originated in India. And we're going to find a trend where the indentured workers who came over to British Guyana from India brought these things with them. And many of them are therefore imported from India. Many of them evolved in Guyana during the period of indentureship. And many of them have been influenced by Europe. When you look at some of the stories, for example, you're going to find quite a bit of European influence. Next slide, please. Now, Balgobin, however, is a bit different from most of those because Balgobin is one of the traditions that actually originated in British Guyana. I don't think that Balgobin was brought over from India. Further research would be needed to say that, well, okay, you can link Balgobin directly to a character that was brought with the indentured servants. When you look at the nature of Balgobin and his background and how he developed in these stories, you can say that it is most likely that Balgobin is a post-indentureship figure. He is a character who actually grew up, who actually evolved in Guyana during the indentureship period. And there is very little trace, there is no trace of any European influence in Balgobin. Next slide, please. Now, Balgobin represents, the Balgobin tales represent social realism. Social realism in the indentureship or the post-indentureship rural Indian society. That is where Balgobin is located, and he's a part of the oral literature. Now, at the University of Guyana, we have a study in oral literature, and there many students are sent out as a part of that course in oral literature to do field work. And they have gone out and they have brought back Balgobin stories from different parts of Guyana. Our main area where most of the stories came from is Cotton Tree. Cotton Tree in Berbice was perhaps the most productive of the areas from which these stories came. And there exists a whole series of Balgobin tales. They are jocular, they are humorous tales, some of them are jokes, and they tend to be quite brief anecdotes, stories put forward in a very humorous way. Next slide, please. We got a few examples of them. We got a few examples of them from the docudrama that you saw, and the documentary gave you a few examples of these tales. And I wish I had a bit more time to analyze them. But we're looking at Balgobin, who is an East Indian primary school boy. He's a boy in primary school. And his age is difficult to estimate his age. We could say he might be about 12, 13, or 14. What is the age, what is the maximum age for a primary school boy in Guyana? Or what was that age going back in the early 20th century? You can place Balgobin in that age range, just about the late period of primary school in Guyana. But the thing about this character is that he is ageless. He is a character above his age. While we know that he is a primary school boy, not more than 14, 13 or so, or not 12, he exceeds that kind of mentality and that age because of what we see about Balgobin. We see him with greater knowledge. Next slide, please. Now, in these stories, as we have heard from the documentary, Balgobin is reputed as the school dunce. He can't answer the questions posed by the teacher. He can't come up with the right answers in terms of what they are. But when you look at the stories, there's a great irony because Balgobin, despite this reputation of being the school dunce, has wisdom beyond his age. Balgobin is very witty, he's intelligent, and very important, he is streetwise. So that Balgobin's mental capacity is superior to all the other characters in the stories. Everybody with whom he comes into contact, his classmates, the teacher, the school inspector, and anybody else. Next slide, please. Now, Balgobin has developed as a folk hero in the Indian community during those years. He developed as a folk hero. And he belongs to the trickster tradition. Professor Paloma Mohammed mentioned the trickster in what she had to say in that documentary. And the trickster tradition is one of the storytelling traditions in the Caribbean and in Guyana. Balgobin is a part of the Guyanese storytelling tradition, and he's a part of the trickster tradition. Now, the trickster is a character like Anansi. Many people in Guyana and Caribbean will know Anansi, who is very famous for his brain, very famous for using his wits. And we find that Balgobin is in that same category where he lives by his wits. He survives by his wits. He gets out of trouble. He always gets into trouble. He gets out of trouble by the use of his wits. And he tends to outsmart everyone. In those stories that we saw in the documentary, he always has a punchline. He always has an end line which gets him out of trouble, perhaps for not doing his work or whatever. But it always indicates a sensibility, and it always indicates a thinking well beyond the ordinary. Next slide, please. Now, what are the origins of Balgobin? We need to be very careful about this because the research is not complete. At least my research is not complete. And I still have to answer a number of questions. Where exactly did Balgobin come from? And up to now, I have not found any reliable information. We have to go by what is known as internal evidence. Internal evidence is evidence that you find within the text. In this case, evidence that you find within the Balgobin stories that could tell you something about their origins. You're not going to find any external evidence like research material, documented material that you can find outside of that to give you what you're looking for. So we depend on internal evidence in trying to locate Balgobin, and what we look at is the focus of the stories, and the focus of the stories is going to be very important and very interesting. Next slide, please. Now, Balgobin is located more than anywhere else in primary school. There are many Balgobin stories. Many of them are located in the village outside of the thing, but most of them seem to be focused in the school. Most of them seem to be about Balgobin as a school boy in class with the teacher, sometimes with the school inspector, many times with his fellow students, and so on. many of the stories are based on lessons in class, and this ought to tell us something about where Balgobin was coming from and what these tales are all about. Why is this large focus on the school? Next slide, please. Now, I am saying that Balgobin originated in British Guyana sometime after primary education was made compulsory in Guyana. The act which was passed to make primary education compulsory was 1876, and it came into effect in January 1877. After that, the children of indentured laborers on the estates, the Balgobin stories are based on the sugar estates in Guyana. The children of the sugar workers had to go to school by law. It was made compulsory that they had to send their children to school. And when we look at this situation, we get hints, we get evidence pointing towards how these tales originated and developed. Next slide, please. Now, the thing is that there were several difficulties in the education system. I just said that sending your children to school became compulsory. And the East Indian workers were now basically obliged to do this. One of the problems was that many of the children were put to work on the estates. The parents would take the children along to work, give them tasks to perform for which they were paid. So that the children performing tasks on the estates was a source of income for the family. And therefore, the family wanted that to continue. And this resulted in a great deal of truancy, a great deal of absenteeism in the schools. Students, when you look at the reports, the colonial studies and reports, one of them pointed out that 1/3 of the population, of the school-age population of British Guyana at that time, went to school. And this was not really fulfilling what was envisaged in making primary education compulsory. So that we see a number of problems. Other problems had to do with religion. The estate workers were mostly Hindus, some of them were Muslims, and some of them were something else. But basically, they were not Christians for the majority, and yet the education system was Christian. And therefore, the religion of these people had a lot to do with the issues that they face and the problems that they face on the estate. The language was another, because those recently coming over from India were not English speakers. Eventually, the Indians on the sugar estate developed Guyanese Creolese. They moved into the Guyanese Creolese, which they spoke. So you had a language problem, you had a religious problem, you had social problems of girls in particular girls not going to school. So all of these things accumulated in difficulties in the education system. Next slide, please. Plus the fact that the education system was not really designed and worked out for the benefit of the indentured laborers. That was not the reason for the colonial government paying attention to education of the children. They had other agendae. But the children of the indentured laborers had to go to school. School now became a part of their society and their social environment. And with the several problems that they faced, Balgobin developed as a satire. Balgobin developed as a critique of the education system in British Guyana. And that might be the reason why the stories are so much focused on the schools. Balgobin represented a championship of the working class, championship of the folk, where Balgobin was always triumphed over others. He triumphed over other people more important than him, supposedly more sensible than him, more educated than him. Balgobin triumphed over them all. And Balgobin therefore represented a kind of a folk hero, a champion of the working class in the way the stories function. Now, while I'm talking about the origins of these tales, and I'm locating it sometime after the Compulsory Education Act in British Guyana, many stories developed after that. Many stories would have developed in the 20th century. Many stories we know developed in modern times, because one of the stories that you heard in the documentary was about the aeroplane. Balgobin being the class being asked by the teacher to draw an aeroplane. So therefore, that story had to have been created during the time of aeroplanes. So what we are saying now is that Balgobin stories did not cease to be created at any particular point in time. They continued right through the existence of the tale. New stories were being created. And if I would say that Balgobin is under threat of survival. And we don't know how many stories are being created at the moment for Balgobin. Next slide, please. But that brings me to the end of what I can say at this time because of the limitations of time. And the next slide basically is acknowledgements, sources, and so on. And I want to acknowledge Ayana Waddell, who was very helpful in me creating this PowerPoint. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crichton. It was quite an informative and analytical presentation. And I think we will have some questions for you. However, I would like to bring in our third speaker, and then we'll treat with the questions after all the speakers. Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, so that's okay.
Very good. Thank you much. So, ladies and gentlemen, our third speaker is Dr. Sita Shah Roth, who also spent a lot of time with us on the trip to Guyana recently. And we can't thank Sita enough for the encyclopedia that she was while on the trip. She's a lecturer in communication at the University of Guyana, trainer in television and film design, production and broadcast, and author of the historical novel titled The Return of Lakshmi. Welcome, Sita.
Thank you. Thank you. So, a little background. I was asked 2 weeks ago by Patambo to do a presentation on Indo-Guyanese folklore. Now, I took him to his word, and I did a survey, because I couldn't just write something he suggested that I use Under the Calabash Tree, a book of short stories that I had published last year. And so I decided to do a short survey on Indo-Guyanese folklore. But before I go to that, I just want to mention my knowledge of Balgobin, seeing that the topic is more about Balgobin. And I grew up in Kitty Village, which was on the East Coast, and then it became part of Georgetown. Now, Kitty Village was Plantation Kitty in the 20th century, that it closed sometime in the early 1900s. And Kitty Village, residents of Kitty Village were Christians in Indo-Guyanese, well, before independence, East Indians, and then after independence, we became Indo-Guyanese. Now, the lifestyle in Kitty was neighbor Angie, neighbor Balram, and so it was a mixture of Hindu, Muslims, Christians. Towards 3-4 streets close to Sandibab Street, in Bar Street, we had a man there eventually, and a school, Ramakrishna School, eventually. Before that, it was an Anglican school, which was Pollard School, a Methodist school, which was Barnum School. And so, and then when Ramakrishna came, which I'm a graduate of Ramakrishna, the stories that were told, the folk stories that were told were from the Ramayana. So we knew all about Ram, all the stories of the Ram Leela, our Diwali presentations on stage were Ram Leelas. The stories told in the classroom were Anansi. We knew all about Brer Anansi, all the Brer Anansi stories, Brer Rabbit stories. We knew all those stories. Balgobin, zero. In Kitty, whether it be Poly School, Pollard School, Barnum School, the Lutheran School over in Campbellville, or Ramakrishna, the Hindu school, there was nothing about Balgobin. So that is my Balgobin knowledge, zero until I saw that documentary and went through and read Pitamba's book on Balgobin. I knew zero about Balgobin. So, but now I know that the presentation is on Balgobin. So based on my request from Pitamba, I did a survey on Indo-Guyanese knowledge of Indo-Guyanese folklore figures. And I went into the memories of Indo-Guyanese folk figures, memories and reflections. And this is a very short presentation. So the population that I used were self-identified Indo-Guyanese. Sample size, 100 participants. And the age range was between 50 to 80 years old. Geographic distribution was residents in Guyana and the Guyana diaspora outside of Guyana, that is, of course. And I asked one open-ended question. What are your memories of Indo-Guyanese folk figures? Nearly 100% mention Olag. And some, instead of saying Olag, they say Sukante. And these are Indo-Guyanese living in Guyana or living outside of Guyana. Nearly everybody said Jumbi. And a few said Churail. Well, 85% said Churail. Churail was another one that I had to learn about. But when it came to Olag, I didn't even know about Sukanti before, as a child growing up. I always knew about Olag and Jumbi and Mungezo. And nearly everybody, the older persons, closer to 60 than 50, knew all about Mungezo. And this is the memories that were shared by participants. All participants remembers that Olag is an old woman by day who could turn into a ball of fire by night. She would shed her skin and place it in a calabash, returning to the calabash when the night's foraging is complete. Victims were considered to be cows and young children, especially babies. The majority believed that to ward off this evil, one had to put babies to sleep in a blue 90 and place a small piece of asafoetida on the baby's clothing or in the baby's hair, also placing a black ticker in the middle of their forehead. And that's why we saw babies in Kitty and Campbellville always with this oily hair, with this lump of black thing in the hair, or on the shimmy, the baby shimmy, and the black ticker in the middle of the forehead. But this was characteristics only of Indian babies or Indo-Guyanese babies. I've never seen it outside of that category, that demography. Another belief is that if there is a suspicion that a particular baby is being visited by an olag in the night, then a calabash of rice would be placed on the windowsill, and this can help to catch the olag before she leaves as daylight comes. One might find her compulsively counting the rice, preventing her to fly back out the window during the night as daylight breaks. And as daylight breaks, she may be caught, if she is caught, and beaten with a cabbage broom. But none of the participants could recall actually knowing of anyone catching an olag in that manner explained. Although some can recall many instances of village people saying that there are instances of particular anemic children who are thin and sickly. And this is so because olag does suck blood at night. So this is something that people recall hearing. Participants recall hearing this. The 1% had no knowledge of olag. And when we look more at that 1%, it was discovered that 1% was found in the Ghana diaspora. And the parents would have migrated with that participant as a baby. And that participant would have had no contact with grandparents. So that is the olag or sukanti in Guyana. I know Trinidad call it a different name, and then Suriname calls it asima in Suriname. But it's the same concept of the folk version of Dracula, except that this is an old woman in day that would be in the village during daytime, just a nondescript old woman. And the same thing in Suriname, the same thing in Trinidad. And but the stories are basically the same. And I always thought that the origin of olag was African, from African folk tales. And there is it. I'm asking all these Indo-Guyanese, and they remember in olag and Mudgeza. And they're not even calling it Sukanti. Most of the persons out of the 100% of participants remember olag and not Sukanti. Only a few, only like 20% call olag Sukanti. 98% remembered Jumbi. And these are their memories. Remember, it was an open-ended question. They remember their parents and or grandparents mentioning Jumbi as an evil spirit. The Jumbi walked around 12 o'clock in noon and 12 o'clock midnight. You could see the Jumbi at these times. And if you're out of the house at midnight, then you need to enter the door by your back, by the rear. Bite your lips and squeeze your toes. Nearly all 98% remember that Jumbis are spirits of dead people. That's how they describe it. 50% mentioned women dressed in long white dresses with long flowing hair. And this, I think, is almost like a European influence. 30% remembered hearing grandparents mention that the baby or child needed to be jarred to keep the evil spirit away, to keep the Jumbi away. I could recall my mom taking me to her mamu, which would be her mother's brother, who was a pandit, and he would jar me. I grew up as a sickly child, very thin, and always I had asthma, and I didn't quite like food. And so I was always thin and sickly. I always had allergies. And so I was always taken to be jarred. This is as a child. And the pandit would take the pointed broom and wave it around like a wand. This is what I recall as a child. Wave it around me as a wand and everything. And then I can't remember if it's Om Swaha he said, but he would wave the wand around me, and that would be like about a 10-minute to 15 minutes experience. And I would go back home, and for me, I felt the same way. But to my mom, I was jarred, so I'm good to go for another, how much, month or 2 or 3. So that is a jumpy. I couldn't go further, but I wanted to end with this poem for the Olag. And as I said, I grew up in Kitty, and this was my orientation towards folklore, Guyanese folklore. And it was across religions, across ethnicity. And the Olag was always there. The Olag and the Jumbie and the Moon Gazer. And the Dutchman under the tree, under the calabash tree, the jumbie, and then some night when we got blackout, we would have jumbie stories. And so they would always, everybody will talk a different jumbie stories, and it was always about spirits. And this poem, all by Wordsworth McAndrew, was always my favorite. And I would dramatize this and have persons dance it. I even had the vice chancellor as a teenager who danced to my dramatized voice, but I will only do the first verse. Old woman with a wrinkled skin, let your lag walk begin. Put on your fiery disguise, old woman with the weary eyes. Shed your swizzly skin. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
Excellent, Sita. You brought back memories, and we could see it coming from the chat especially. You brought back memories of the Sukunya and the Jambi in Trinidad. It's the very same thing. The Churail would be Mahabir's book on folklore as well. So yeah, we share the same story, and it's stories, and it's incredible that those folklore came across, I don't want to say through the boats, but perhaps with the boats, we don't know. So thank you very much for raising that. Again, I want to hold the questions. Let's just take our next speaker, who is Mr. Michael Khan, and then we'll come back to questions and comments and so on. Yeah? Thanks again, Sita.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you our fourth and final speaker today, who is Mr. Michael Khan. He's a dramatic storyteller known as Old Man Papi. He has dedicated his life to safeguarding Guyana's cultural heritage through dramatic storytelling, puppetry, and priceless artifacts. He is also a University of Guyana lecturer. Welcome, Mr. Khan.
Good afternoon, neighbors.
Good afternoon.
And to all the mamas, happy Mama Day. I am Old Man Papi. And I want to tell you about Old Man Papi, the Charail, the Sukanti, and the Indian Jumbie. Right? Now, my research entails 3 sugar estates, which is the Wales Sugar Estate, the Versil Sugar Estate, and the Iflut Sugar Estate. So my talk or my research is based around those sugar estates. I first started the research when I was doing my my studies at the university, where we had 3 months to present a study. And it was, now, the gong was an important aspect of Old Man Papi. And Old Man Papi was used, right, to announce the death of people in the village, because at the time when Old Man Papi was popular, there were no radios, there were no televisions, there were no cell phones, just Old Man Papi and his voice. And if you wanted Old Man Papi to announce the death in your family, you tell him and you would go around tolling his bell. Old Man Papi dead. Funeral tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Wait tonight. Come all, come one. That was in deaths. But then you came to the part where there was a wedding. And of course, most of our Indo-Guyanese, at the time, the early times, just retain the indenture and post-indenture, didn't go to school. So they would do it the old time way, call Old Man Papi and tell Old Man Papi all the people who they want to invite and those that must not be invited. And how Old Man Papi did it. The time of the gong was a little bit more. Neighbor Sati daughter getting married to Ramjan's son. Dick Dotty is Friday night. Dinah the girl is Saturday. So Sunday is the wedding and Monday is Kangang Day. Now, if Old Man Papi stand up in front your gap, which is the front of your house, or your bridge to cross over, and he knock your bell, you mean he calling you. So you have to come out. And when you come out, you can take some rice grains, colored rice grains, and put it in your hand and close it. If you get the rice grains in your hand, mean that you were invited to the wedding, which included the Dick Dotty, the Dinah the girl, the wedding, and Kangang Day. And that is how they did it. Apart from that, Old Man Papi was a beggar. He was of no high repute. He was just an ordinary soul walking, but in his heart and in his mind, his people were of utmost importance, and he did every single thing to help them succeed in life. He would keep their children, telling them stories if they had to go to a meeting, a village meeting. He would also go from village to village with different kinds of seeds, because our Indian ancestors planted greatly to survive. And he would take, now if let's say Windsor Forest got good yard borer seeds, he would go to Windsor Forest, then bring and share it with people in good fortune, and other places. So he was purposeful. And thank God, our ancestors, they had a vision, not only for themselves, but for their future. So that is it. Now, as a researcher, I take on the persona of the Old Man Papi, and I go telling stories. I go into schools, and the grade 6 examinations is concluded, and I've got to visit at least 30 schools, talking specifically to the 6th graders, telling them stories. Yes. Now, as I go on, Indian folklore. Indian folklore was designed like any other folklore to scare the living daylights out of you. When our African brothers came, moon gazer was invented by the Europeans. Why was it invented? Moon gazer stood right on the dam. And when he stands there, the slaves who would enter the sugar estates at night to suckle the cane because they didn't get enough. As a slave, you barely got sustenance. So they would want to venture into the cane fields in the night. And the moon gazer came up, 2 o'clock, come on in. Moon light to shine, dog a look from the old, look a light up. M.R. Monar wrote Moon Gazer. Then after the Moon Gazer, our Dutch settlers came in and they made a lot of money on their farms. Now, in those days, you didn't have banks. So what they did, they would establish a counting room in their house. And it's so said, so happened, I can't really prove it, but as a storyteller, it sounds so darn good, you know, that one day a house slave saw Massa going into the counting room with a glass of milk and a bunch of banana. And when the door was closed, he heard, ah, and that is one way or one thing as to the Baku. Now, I must continue because our folklore is based on historical evidence and historical facts. The English had Demerara. Then the Dutch took it over and they became prosperous. And then they had a war. And the English beat the Dutch. And the Dutch had to run back, but they had to run in such a short time that they didn't get time to pack all their gold. So what they did, legend has it that they took their gold and planted it into a silk cotton tree. And there they left the Baku to watch man their gold. Prior, England had returned Demerara to the Dutch, but the second time, England did not return Demerara to the Dutch. So the Baku milk ran out and the bananas that fed the Baku ran out. So legend has it that since then, you ever hear the legend of the Dutchman Killam? Ah, yes, with his live right by the silk cotton tree up the road. Neighbor Ramjan's son wanted to get married to Sati Data. But his mama and daddy been tell him, say, oh, that estate not grind. So let him wait. But he loved the girl so much. And then he hear that under the silk cotton tree, ay, got gold. And with gold, he could have the biggest bariat. Yes. You see, so that is how it evolved. And I don't have enough time to go through the whole thing, but I'm just giving you little things on that. And that is how you found that now, when the East Indians came, but before that, after the Africans were emancipated and they went to the village and started their village life, then the whole Hague was born. The whole Hague was not a European. It was all your own Mati, one of your own kind, were killing and sucking your children. Now, in those days, the indentured servants and the other emancipated Africans didn't have any great deal of, medical insurance or medical services like we do have today. So the mortality rate of children was very, very high within the African ancestry and also in the East Indian ancestry. So now when the birth of the Sukanti, now the Sukanti, to my research, is a little different from the whole hive. Now, when the indentured servants came, the place was filthy. And what happened is that their children were dying. And then they realized that the cow was sacred. And the milk was sacred, so was the cow dung. And the early indentured serfs started to dab their surroundings here in British Guyana like they did in India. With that, because they felt that the dung was sacred, it would drive away the Sukanti, the evil spirit that is haunting their children. And it became even widespread with people dabbing their surroundings. It didn't only stop at the East Indians, because in the rural areas, we find that African persons were dabbing. Because why? It presented a clean environment for poor people. So the dabbing of the area helped to prevent, right, the Sukwanti from, but they were always summoned. Like Dr. Roth said, you had to take the child to be Jari. And it's a process that entails the child's return to health. And the return to health was not based on medicine, but on spirituality of their religion. The other one that I want to talk quickly about is the Charail. The Charail is classified as a woman who walks in the night, who died of child's birth. Sometimes the mother and the child died. And it is said that the spirit of the mother roams the streets in the darkness of night, giving a little groan. She does not, according to my research, traumatize people. It's just that she's an expression of trauma in our own right, that she just goes and walks. If she sees you, she ignores you and passes you straight, trying to find her child. That is with the Charail. Then now, we've got another Indian folklore, which is the Indian Jambi. Ever heard about the Indian Jambi? Now, when the indentured servants came from India, few of them came with lots of gold teeth in their mouth. Now, to the locals, it was strange to see gold in a person's mouth. And all of a sudden, don't know how, but there evolved the Indian Jambi, which had characteristics of the Baku. And the Baku had characteristics of the leprechaun. So you see how history and culture interfuse to create something. So he would just wait in the dead of night when you're walking alone. And many, many drunk people said they saw the Indian Jambi. And the Indian Jambi would come up to you. And he would skin his teeth and say, hey, do you like my teeth? Do you like my teeth? The last thing that I am going to talk about is the buying of children that is practiced in the Wales Sugar Estate environment, also in the Versailles environment, and in the Iflut environment, where now you have two families, two neighbors. One neighbor, children healthy, and she getting them enough, and they growing nice. The other neighbor struggling. She had a lot of stillbirths, and when one of them born, it was kind of sickly. Now, tradition has it that the sickly child needed to be sold by its mother to a family that had healthy children. So there was the process where the mother will come to the healthy family and say, I got my daughter for sale, or I have my son for sale. Now, this wasn't no slavery thing or nothing. It was just a task that was performed to ensure the health of our children. And thus, the healthy parent would give the sickly child's parent a copper penny. It couldn't be nothing else but a copper penny, which is 2 cents. And thereafter, it is said that the children grew healthy because the mother sold the child to a healthy family. The child remained with its mother when it did every single thing, but it was just the act of tradition, of wanting to succeed, of wanting to be able, to have healthy children growing in their environments, that this was done. I don't know. Time and me don't agree at all. And I think I'm at the end of my time. I was told 10 minutes, and I think I've gone over a little, but forgive the old man. The old man walking slow. And in closing, good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. A number of persons have been quite entertained by your presentation, your narrating style, and I have to say it's the first for us on the program, I think. Dr. Mahaber, would you agree?
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, I have written and published a book. It's on Amazon called Indian-Caribbean Folklore Spirits. And I have identified and described about 5 of them in the Caribbean. There is the Sapin, the snake woman, who is a woman who turns into a snake in the night and so on. 5 or 6 husbands who the snake bite. And how would you identify such a woman? With a mark of a snake on her back, right? She has like a kind of tattoo, but not really a tattoo, a discoloring of the skin. So you have the sapien, and then you have the churil, which you have mentioned. But the churil, in this case, in the Trinidad narrative, attacks women who are pregnant because she's envious of them. They were able to bear a child and have a child, and she did not. It's a woman who has committed suicide during childbirth. And then there's a jinn, which has come from the Islamic tradition. And certain groups of Muslims do jari too. I remember seeing that myself with my own eyes. And you have others too, the Dibaba, who is a protector of the land. And you have to, before you build a house, as soon as you buy land, you have to tie the land, you have to protect it, and you have to do certain rituals. Before you build a house, you dig a hole and you make offerings of milk and so on, you say a prayer. So in every plot of land, there is a Dibaba who has to be placated, right, to protect the land and the house from envious neighbors. Neighbors are often envious, so you have to protect them, especially if you are growing in wealth. So these are the 5 Caribbean Indian folklore spirits that I've identified, and I've documented these in the book, which is available on Amazon. So a lot of similarities. But whenever a Trinidadian is going to Suriname or Guyana, quite often you have somebody asking to bring a buck for them. That is a short person. It's all mythology, like a doll. And you bring that buck. Yeah, I don't know how you bring it in a suitcase or carry-on. And it's a living thing. It's a creature, a short man. You have to feed it, give it cigarettes and sardines and so on. And then he will make you rich. He will make you wealthy. So I don't know if others, I see there, who was that? I saw a guy here who would know a lot and probably can add. Simon, if you just raise your electronic hand, and Jai says, I'm sure can add, and I've seen Mr. Ramnaris, but he is gone. And Winston Dukaran, we are honored to have you. So we can get a Trinidadian perspective on these Indo-Guyanese folklore figures. Yeah? Just raise your hand or indicate your electronic hand.
While they're doing that, so for Genesis of a Nation 1 and 2 in Guyana, where we celebrated 150th anniversary of emancipation and the indentureship, the arrival of the first Indians from India, first indentured servants from India, we had 2 conferences organized by the University of Guyana. And we had researchers from Anthony Com University at the Pegasus Hotel was the venue. And they were all, the Surinamese academics were saying, the Baku came from Guyana. You had to send Guyana and send to Guyana for a little man. That's the Baku. And that's to get wealth and all of that. So you send for a little man, just like a leprechaun, in my mind. That's what I thought. You sent to Guyana for the Baku, right? No, the Guyanese lecturers who were making the presentation said, no. You had to send to Suriname to get the Baku. The Baku didn't come from Guyana. It came from Suriname. So the Guyanese had to send over to Suriname for the Baku. So there was that conflict with the Baku. And about there was another thing Michael Kahn mentioned about about some similarities with the yes, this Sunan, yes,
the flying woman,
yes,
who flies in the
night. So I was going to talk about that a little more, but I would give away to the other person.
Right. Jai says you know a lot of these Balgobin stories. I heard them from you. Okay, I see. Jay has his hand up, so let me unmute you, Jay, and you can talk. Where is Jay? Let's see, Jay.
I can't unmute the video.
Yeah, okay, but you can talk. I'll do that in time.
Okay. Yeah, the question is, how much of this folklore came out of the interaction between the first Indians and the Africans before that, and the Amerindians, who were there long before the Africans and the Indians, because they had folklore too. The Arawaks and the other indigenous people of the land. How much of that reaction? Because if you take South Africa or you take Africa, when the Indians came there, the first people they found was the Zulus, or the Xhosas, or the Swenas, or somebody of the Bantu race. And they had all their, what we call folklore. And then here in the islands, they had these Indians there, the ancient indigenous people. They must have had something that sort of taught us, or taught the Indian indentured people through the years of evolution. And I'm sure Dr. Mahavir will know that aspect. And the very fact that they had some cultural coordination. And that's how you get these stories about the married woman, the childbearing woman, and so on and so on and so on.
Yes, well, over time, yes, people living close together, working together, having relationships of all kinds and at all levels, there would be commingling and a lot of mixing in a lot of ways, and adaptation and borrowing, and all that is part of culture, which is dynamic. Culture is never stagnant. It's
Right.
always evolving. So yes, there would be that acculturation and adaptation going on, taking place all the time.
Dr. Mahavir, I wonder if Mr. Al Crichton might want to shed some light here.
Sure.
Mr. Crichton, would you like to add? Please unmute your mic.
Yes, there was quite a bit of interaction, intermixtures. Now, the thing is that many of the characters that were named today are found in both the African and the Indian traditions. And while many people in Guyana would believe that creatures like the Baku and the Olaig are African in the African tradition, researchers found that as many Indians will tell you about the Olaig and the Baku, at University of Guyana, we do have a study that is done in oral literature, in oral traditions, and the students go out to research, to do field work, and they talk to people. And what we have found is that the Indians will tell you about Baku, and they will tell you about Olaig and so on. And that is because these traditions have grown up with the Indians during the course of history after indentureship. Where the Amerindians are concerned, there are stories and characters from the Amerindian background which have survived. And some of them have survived as Guyanese traditions, like the moon gazer, like the Masakura man, and so on, which have survived, and they are the fair maid, which are very deeply linked with the Amerindian traditions. So the point is that yes, the short answer is yes. There have been many of these folklore characters which can be found in different traditions, in many of the different traditions. And some of the stories have grown up in Guyana among the different ethnic groups during the course of history.
Yes, good. Thank you. I see Simon has his hand up. Go ahead, Simon.
Yes, Doc. Good afternoon, everyone. Just 2 comments. I myself was sold for 25 cents to a neighbor. That is one. And in Trinidad, I have known that any lady who has more than 2 husbands and they have died before her, there is great suspicion that she has a snake on her back. But I have never really seen anyone with that, or if anyone have actually seen anyone with that. But that is a lot of rumors that go around the village life in Trinidad.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So that is my comment.
Thank you. Anybody again?
The other thing I can say too is that we have also heard of Trinidad equivalents of some of the Guyanese characters, and that is another factor with different names, but the same character with different names, and also similar characters. You're going to find them in both the Trinidadian tradition and the Guyanese tradition. And just as you find with the ethnic groupings, those characters exist. And it's interesting to see the similarities and some of the equivalencies that take place in the traditions.
Yes, Scott Ting Aki, I think you were making a lot of comments on the chat. Do you want to speak? Scott? Okay, we have a quite, yes. Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So yes, the Jari was coming up and I found it very interesting because I know that Jari is something that I've only heard about it really in Indian culture, but it's also something that my mother's family would have practiced as well, and they're Portuguese. So it was something that my maternal grandmother would have taught my mother to do, and she kind of passed it down. And it's just something that we do in our family whenever we think that the baby get bad eye or the baby not eating like our baby's supposed to eat. We do our version of Jari that's been passed down, which I found very interesting. And to make it even more interesting, as far as I know, my well, I don't know, probably because they come from the Portuguese who used to live in Essequibo. So it's the only place I can think of where they used to live that would have probably had a very large Indo demographic. So from the Pomeroon side, probably, but then they eventually moved to Brima Waini, which was more Amerindian than anything, and then they came to town. So I'm thinking probably somewhere along the line in the Pomeroon, it may have ended up becoming absorbed into the culture, but I've never heard about it happening in any other context outside of my family, really. I just find it very interesting.
Yes, thank you. So the whole concept and practice of jarring, which really means cleansing or purifying, is universal. It takes different forms. And interestingly, it has been adapted to the political sphere. We had elections recently in Trinidad and Tobago about 2 weeks ago. And some people who were campaigning walked with a broom, a coconut broom, and they were sweeping, symbolizing that they want to get rid of the opponent. And yes, people in Trinidad, as far as I know, tend to jarry with a broomstick, right? They would jarry babies who are vulnerable, who seems to be afflicted with by a lot of evil spirits, and then they would take the broomsticks and make some strokes using mantras and so on. Muslims do it differently. I've seen a Muslim not using a broomstick, but a piece of stick, and say some prayers and make stroking motions and blow. They would also blow with their breath and cleanse or purify the baby or whoever from these evil spirits. But again, that is disappearing because people are depending almost solely on Western medicine. They go to the pharmacy instead of the spiritual healer in the neighborhood. And that practice is disappearing. But it needs to be documented in text and in film. So it's very good what Pitemba has been doing and Al as well. Yes, Jay has his hand up.
Just a humble request of the panel today and anybody who works with jars and so on. Can you send one down to the White House in Washington, D.C.?
Okay, all right, yes. So that's taking it a political dimension. Yes. Okay, anybody
So
again?
one thing
Yeah.
before somebody comes. So somebody mentioned about bringing the jambi from India. And I could recall my grandmother said that on the ship that they came, and other persons mentioned the same thing, that the jambi followed the ship from India, from Calcutta to Guyana. And so, but when we probed further, we discovered that what was following the ship from India was actually whales, and they were spouting up water. And so because the whales would follow the ship, the term that the indentured servants, the ships on the ship decided that it was a jambi following them to Guyana.
Yes, I also want to point out that in Trinidad, Jumbie is a generic term. So Jumbie can take different forms and different names. You can't identify a Jumbie by a shape, a particular shape. It's an umbrella term. Okay, Banmati, you have anything to add? Or anybody? Roseanne, yes, Roseanne from Lupino in Trinidad. Roseanne,
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
yes, clearly.
Okay. So yes, I grew up in Lupino, and we were in the valley, the mountains, forests were all around us, and this is gonna sound a little garbled because I haven't really planned it out, and I'm trying to say a lot of things here. So we lived in a plantation structure. Okay, so the history of the plantation cruelty was very much part of who we were, right? And my grandmother and the other older people around us, I think they had to find a way to to express, to communicate this cruelty. So one of the ways they did it was that they found characters, right? The characters evolved who would talk about this. Because, yeah, I'm saying, there are archetypes that are across all cultures, but then in our culture, with the plantation history, these archetypes take on different forms, right? For example, we were told um, that so we live in a valley, the wind is going through the valley, making all kinds of noises. There's all kinds of forest animals. There's the river, right? And what was conveyed to us in my interpretation is that the kind of cruelty, the level of cruelty, the depth of cruelty that happened in that area and the plantation, it lives in the forest. It lives in the trees. It lives in the earth. It lives in the water. It lives in the sky. It doesn't disappear. It is just too much. Okay, so characters evolve. So we have the Duen, for example. Okay, which I don't know if anybody has written about a Duen. The Duen is sorry, an unbaptized child who lives in limbo and comes to haunt other children. So there is this, this malevolence of what has been done to children that lives on. There is Papa Bois, the keeper of the forest, who can be seen as protecting the forest, but you don't mess with him because he's very powerful. Okay. So there's a poetry there of people trying to convey cruelty and what has happened that lives on in our consciousness, that never dies. And these folkloric characters evolved to represent those abstractions. Okay, am I making sense?
Yes, thank you. And there's a lot has been written on these folklore spirits, these folklore characters or figures in Trinidad. You just have to go on the internet. There's a lot. Jenny Lynn has her hand up.
Yeah, can I share a painting that I did, some of the folklore characters? Could you let me
Sure,
share that?
sure. I mean, yeah. Go ahead now.
Um, okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, so we have Papa Bois under the tree, Mama Delo, Lagahu, Dwen. The last speaker mentioned it, Dwen. So the lost souls of children unbaptized. You have La Diablesse with the cow hoof. And well, I had my sukuya in the tree. She didn't turn into a bowl of pie yet, but I see a lot of similarities with some of the characters
in Guyana, and I guess throughout the Caribbean, maybe we have shared heritage. So I just wanted to show this representation that I've done, showing some of the folkloric characters. And
Yes, thank you. Great.
I see moon gazer.
Uh-huh.
I see snake woman.
So snake woman, we call her Mama Jalo, French patois. And the moon gazer, we call him
Sapin.
Lagahu.
Okay. Yes, the Lagahu. Okay. Right.
I just want to ask the Mama Glow, right?
Jalo.
I know from St. Lucia,
Uh-huh.
which who lives in the water.
Yes.
And equivalent of her would be like the fair maid, the water mama.
Oh, okay.
You said the snake woman in Trinidad. Could you just expand a little bit on that? The mama glow. There is a variant in the pronunciation, mama glow, mama glow.
Well, Delo is of water, D apostrophe.
Yes.
L-L-E-A, yo. So, living near to a river, terrorizing people, you know. With Lagahu, you'd come out, in the moonlight, he would stand across a highway and, terrorize passers-by but definitely when the moon is shining, he'll come out.
But yes, but the Lagahu, in my childhood, I would have heard that he sexually molests women in the night.
Oh,
while they're asleep. Yeah.
I heard a different
I grew up in the
story.
countryside, and people in the village would often point out a person who they suspect is a Lagahu.
Oh, okay.
Yes, who would turn in the night and come through little crevices and cracks in the doorway. Yes, but he would also attack scare men too, and maybe attack them, because he would be on the road and climb on a bridge with one foot on each railing.
Yes,
and they would have to pass between him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this Lagahu, there is a creature called the Lagaroo.
Variant, could be.
Coming from the French islands and so on, the Lagaroo, who somebody turns into this large dog-like creature, canine kind creature, large, that roams at night. Is there any connection between that creature and the Lagaroo that you're talking about?
And the werewolf.
Yeah,
well,
it's a different character.
It's a different character.
I don't know if the Lagahu turned into a dog. That may be a different type of Jumbie.
Yeah, it's a different one.
Yes.
But what I found interesting, the last speaker, I can't remember her name, that these spirits live in the forest because of the torture of the colonizers. It's a very interesting perspective, and I haven't heard that before, but I do believe it's true, because of all the torture that was done to our forefathers. The spirits live in these different characters that we've given names, and they continue to live in the forest.
So what you need to include here, Janlin, is the jinn. There's a lot about the jinn, good jinns and bad jinns.
Yeah, but there are many characters. I just put a few, and the duendes in
that's
particular, the little ones.
And the Churail, who is, as Al mentioned, this woman who died during childbirth, and she roams the streets and villages and so on. And in Trinidad, Al, how do you know a Churail is around? Is you will hear the child crying, and the child would cry like a cat. So sometimes when you think it's a cat that is crying, it's really the little baby that is crying. And that's how you identify the Churail. Yep.
No, there's a one factor, somebody asked earlier about the cross-cultural mixes and so on. And the Duen, for example, gives you a good example of what happens with the folklore and with these oral tradition and characters. Because the Duen is known in West Africa very much in a similar fashion. The Duen is a term that they use to call the dead. And there are characters in West Africa. For example, the what is it now? All right, the baby who was not given a name, who dies before being given a name, and that baby would come back as a spirit character. In Trinidad, you hear about the baby who has not been christened, and you have there the Christian influence, the kind of the Christian influence on that character, the Duen. I love it, and that just gives you examples of some of the influences and some of the mixtures.
Yes, so good. But you see the strong French influence, just by the names.
Yes.
Duen and so on, Lagahul, the Bless. Strong French influence. Yeah, I think we would.
All right.
I see who has Pitemba has his hand up. Yeah, you have to unmute Pitemba.
Right. I recalled. I don't know if this is mixed with a spirit. I recall the young girls were advised not to go walking near to the black water because there is a spirit that would attach to the backbone and preventing them to conceive. I have no name for it, but I've heard stories about that.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's mixed with the, anything to do with prayer maid and water mama and all spirits.
Yes.
But the young girls were advised not to go out alone in the evening, walking by the Blackwater Canal.
Yes. Okay. I hope I was hoping Shanti would talk because Shanti Singh would know a lot about these folklore spirits in Trinidad. Okay, Shalima, you can
And
take it.
I think Miss Cummins is online. Perhaps you can invite her if she's got anything to say. Shalima, I think I noticed her.
Pitamba, unfortunately, she left. So we didn't have an opportunity to ask her to speak. And she didn't raise her hand to add anything while we had some other people doing so. So imagine this very interesting conversation came about all because of Balgobin.
And I've learned, and thank you, Al. I've learned a lot from Al. I've got a bow to Al on this subject now. Al has placed another perspective on Balgobin, and in fact, it is in the right place. The University of Guyana to take up this and to carry it on, for characters, to study them, document them, and see where we can go.
Yeah.
And then to you, ICC, this is definitely a unique opportunity to be part and parcel of what's happening. I mean, wonderful conversation, and so much has come out into it. I mean, our minds are ticking over. My mind is ticking over right now, with so many ideas.
Right. Dr. Kogi, anything from South Africa?
Yeah, Kogi.
Folklore spirits?
Yeah, they are, but I haven't prepared anything in detail, but they are, and we're going to share them in August when everyone comes to South Africa.
Yes, so Kogi is the one who is organizing the tour, main organizer.
So
So
can you unmute my video so everyone can see me whilst I'm talking and
yeah.
they will know they will
What you look like.
recognize me as soon as they arrive in King
Yes.
Shaka International Airport.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah,
Yes.
looking forward to seeing all of you and sharing our tons and tons of South African stories. Very interesting. Yeah, so when you arrive
Hello.
here, we're going to do these fireside chats around a fire, open fire, whilst we're cooking, and then we're going to share. We're looking forward to hosting all of you, eh? And Betty
Hey.
Govenden is also going to help us with those folklore stories.
So we should have
Thank
one
you.
topic should be on folklore spirits or
Yes,
folklore
the
figures.
one thing that comes to mind, which I learned from my mother-in-law, is that when you're carrying fresh meat or mutton curry from one home to the other,
That's
you
true.
should
That's
always
true.
have red chilies. You know, the red dried chilies
Yes.
packet. So from one home, they said because the spirit can follow you. So I've just adopted that as well. So you'll find a lot of red chilies in my home because I carry cooked meals from my mother-in-law to my place.
I know charcoal too. I think they would carry
And
charcoal.
charcoal as well.
Yeah.
And there's also
See?
the other one about the
See?
thing called the nudger, you know, like when you have
Yes,
these ill
yes.
omens.
Bad
So
eye. Bad eye.
it's the same. It's like it's a bit of hair, some red chili, some salt, and I think some sputum. You mix it together, and then you turn it around, and then you burn it, and then obviously that removes the evil eye. So yeah, that's just two examples that I can
But
off
it's
the cuff right
universal.
now.
You are quite from South Africa, and look, we have that commonality of the charcoal.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
transport food, so
Yeah.
the spirit don't taste the food.
Yeah.
And
So you never carry cooked food to your neighbor's house or in our case, your sister's house or whoever without putting that red pepper in it.
Yeah, and also salt. We don't ever take salt from another family. If you run short, you have to probably give them, even if it's 5 cents. It's like you're paying for it. You never take salt. That's what
Yeah.
my mother always tells me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of stories to tell in South Africa.
Lots of stories to tell. And then, of course, at night, we don't leave the house with our hair open. Well, that's mainly the over 50s. The youngsters, it's a totally different story. But those of us over 50, we would always grip it up or something like that when we leave home, late at night. Yeah.
Cover your
But
hair.
it's,
Cover
yeah,
your hair
yeah.
once you're
You have
going
to
out
cover
at
your
night.
hair up
Yeah.
tight.
Yeah, tie. It's mainly to tie it, especially if you have long hair. Yeah. Put a grip or clip or something.
So we have a lot more to talk about, and we are at 5:04 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been extremely interesting, and it's been such a pleasure to have Pitemba here with us, Dr. Sita with us, Mr. Al Crichton with us, and of course, Michael Khan, as well as all of you all who participated. I want to thank you all very much, and I hope we can have this conversation in person at other times. So thank you all very much. Shakira, over to you.
Thanks, Anne. And this was indeed a very interesting topic. I really enjoyed it. So we look forward to South Africa and their stories. So,
yes, absolutely.
As we've said earlier, this public meeting is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. And like today, we often partner with the Amina Ghafoor Institute for the Study of Indentureship and its Legacies, led by Professor David Davy. And we are also pleased to be partly supported by the Sport and Culture Fund in the Office of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And you can feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books. Remember that we are asking for suggestions and donations, and you can contact Dr. Mahathir for details. Our topic next Sunday will be Songs on Indentureship in the Indian Diaspora. So something to look forward to. Thank you to the planning team led by Dr. Kumar Mahabir and Shalima Mohammed, YT consultants Daryl Grantham, Navin Mangal, and Ravin Ram Singh. So please visit, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all our past recordings. I am Shakira Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago saying goodbye. May God bless you all. Dhanyavad.
We have stopped the recording.